Our topic today is be abundant. I want to begin with what it feels like not to be abundant. So I'm going to just invite you to think about maybe some point this past week where you didn't feel abundant. Maybe you didn't feel enough in something, enough at your work or in a relationship, or you don't have enough, you don't feel abundant in relationships, a financial thing, time, you don't have enough time. So some point in the past week when you didn't feel like you had enough. When we feel that way, I'm not going to say this is an absolute truth, but I would say 90% of the time when we don't feel abundant, my bet is we also don't feel connected to the divine. I think it's very hard to actually feel connected to the divine and feel the limitation. So I wanted to look at just the term itself, abundance, as it's seen in the human realm. In the human realm, it's a lot of something, a lot of in numbers. It's a quantity. In fact, when I looked it up, quantity was in both of the definitions, and one was just having a plenty of really good things. So it's things that we have, it's things that we may own. But spiritually, abundance is about knowing who and what we really are. Spirit is not a quantifiable thing. It is not something that can be measured. There's no lot of spirit or a little bit of spirit. It is always just itself, fully, completely, and wholly all of the time. It can't limit itself. So the moment we connect with spirit, we start to feel the natural state, our own natural state of abundance. Excuse me, I was contemplating this idea this past week, just how when I'm connected, all my needs are met. I want to say all my good, but that throws us off because good is can be also seen as good and bad. So I just want to be clear that when I'm talking about sort of the infinite good, there is no opposite. So in the human realm, there's good and bad. There's the duality. But when we start moving to the higher levels, and spiritually that's why we're here, is to move to higher and higher vibrations, those opposites begin to dissolve, and there's one, and it is infinitely good, where there is no opposite. So I was just contemplating that when I'm one with God, all that my good is right there. I was meeting two friends for lunch on Thursday, and we were meeting at Star Anise. And it was 12:15 Thursday. I know the high school had final exams, so a lot of them were out. There was construction on the streets. There was cars everywhere. And I'm driving down First Street on the opposite side of Star Anise, and this is a conversation I'm having in my head. I am not going to do a treatment for a parking place today. I just know that I'm one with God, and so if I'm one with God, all my good is here, and I don't have to fight for it. I don't have to say words about it. It just is. And so I'm just going to be in the oneness of God. I have a whole long conversation. So I'm driving. I'm like, well, it doesn't look like cars are going to be coming out because all the parking lot spaces, as usual, are all taken. But sometimes people come out, but no one was coming out. No. So I said, well, fine, I'll just go to the parking lot because I hadn't limited my good. I didn't assume that my good was a parking place on First Street. I was just trusting that there was a spot somewhere for me. There was an abundance of parking places, and it was all going to be good. So as I'm driving by Star Anise, I see a woman get in the car to drive out. It happens to be just this. It was because I saw her get into the car. If I had waited for her to pull out, I would have lost my chance. But just as I see her get in, for the first time, there's no cars either way. I can just make a quick U-turn effortlessly. I make a quick U-turn, she pulls out, and I pull right into the parking place right in front of Star Anise. Who needs to treat for parking places? I was being with that, however, that whole process. I think part of what happened is that I love what Joel Goldsmith says, that we actually have a hard time connecting with the divine when we start judging things as good and bad, better or worse. In that moment, I was just as happy to park in the parking garage. That could have also been for my good. We could have had one of my friends who I was meeting for lunch had parked there. We could have had a nice walk together in a beautiful fresh air after lunch and had a nice conversation. That also could have been for my good. It just so happened on this particular day, and I didn't know it at the time, but while we were having lunch, there was some confusion about schedules back at home, and I had to race out of there. And it was nice that I didn't have to go to the parking garage that particular day, that I was parked close. And Spirit must have known. But either way, it was fine with me. And so I think one of the things that we do around abundance is we start measuring. We think abundance has a lot to do with what we have. We start measuring better or worse, quantity, how much. And just that mere judgment itself constricts us. I could go into an old habit pattern. I don't think we do this anymore, but if I had treated for a parking place and I had wanted to get one in front of Star Anise, I didn't get one, I had to park in the garage. I'm just not able to manifest a perfect parking place. And I could have beaten myself up. I could have constricted. In that moment, I would have just constricted my good, my connection with Spirit. Because at that moment that I would say, I can't manifest, or I'm not very connected with God, then I'm disconnecting myself with God. That little bit of judgment that I have over a parking place, something that completely doesn't matter. But in that moment, I could have disconnected myself, saying, I'm not good enough. And that's where we want to shift from. Abundance is always there, and it's in our connection with God. And when we know that we are always connected, not just intellectually, but we are practicing. That's why we do our daily spiritual practices. To continue, as Richard Baker has said, it makes us accident prone to actually experience the divine presence. And to experience the divine presence, when we are in that place, we start to accept whatever arises. And we don't judge it as bad or good. We recognize that is the infinite good of God in that moment. So in that moment, it was great that I was in front because I had to race home. At another lunch, it would have been lovely to have a walk with my friend back to the parking garage. We start trusting this infinite universe. We trust it because we're deeply connected. So to be abundant, a spiritually motivated leader, is one, to know our connection with the divine, to know our connection with Spirit. Whatever language you like to use, love, intelligence of the universe, Brahma, Allah, God, to know that connection is to know abundance. The second way to be abundant is know that we are complete in ourself. So much of the time when we don't feel enough, and by the way, Joel Goldsmith says that just by being birthed into this plane of existence, we're birthed into the false belief of not enoughness because we're in duality. So already there's separation. And just that mere sense of separation, we have a feeling of not enoughness. And they point to the fact, it's also Joel's student, Barbara Mary Mull, points to that this is true of countries, collective groups, corporations, not enough. There's this false belief of not enough. So in the human realm, there's a lot of not enough. When we start aligning ourselves with Spirit, we recognize that we are complete in ourselves, that nothing of this world can be added onto us. Who by a thought can add 1 cubit of stature to themselves? Have you ever heard of that? We cannot add to who Spirit already is as us, nor can anyone take anything away from us. Do you hear that? Do you know how amazing and freeing that is? Nobody, nothing of this world can add 1 cubit of stature to our beingness. No amount of money, no amount of success, no amount of fame, no amount of power is going to ever add on to who we are. One of the people that I find that interesting with is Bruce Jenner, who's now Caitlyn Jenner. All the success he had being a decathlon winner at the Olympics in the 70s. So talent-wise, he had fulfilled his highest potential, and yet still he wasn't who he was, or she was now, Caitlyn Jenner. And until that happened, she could have all the success, fame, incredible gifts, talents, and none of it mattered because she wasn't aligned with who she is. When we connect with the divinity, it's also about being fully and completely who we are. And when we are that, nobody can touch that. Nothing of this earth plane can ever touch that. We are set free. We start aligning ourselves with everything that's happening in an ease and grace. When I applied for my first job, there was a whole interview process, etc. I knew it was already done. It wasn't about me being better than the other person. Competition is huge. We fight for materials and resources, for jobs. if you go see a practitioner, the practitioner will say, and it's already done. Because there's a sense of it's already complete. Where you belong, where we belong as human beings, it's already fulfilled in spirit, and we are aligning ourselves with it. And as the more we align with it, things start to happen and unfold to make that happen. We align ourselves with the already done consciousness. The prayer is fulfilled when we see and feel and know it. And it's not a competition. Our good can never take from anyone else's good. So we do two things. Sometimes we feel like our good is going to limit someone else's good, so we hold back a little bit. Or we feel like someone else's good is holding us back, or something someone else has done. No one is responsible for us but us. We are an entity unto ourselves. We need to know and feel and hear and allow ourselves to stand in that. You know, I shared a few weeks ago of having that experience when I was in the hospital. When I had the spiritual experience of knowing that I was just complete within myself, it has been absolutely fascinating to me. What has it been? Two months since then, how much I've moved away, how easily comparison to other people, I'm not enough, I got to do this because someone else is doing this, or I want to, whatever, all the comparisons, all the judgments that we make. And I thought, man, it's only been 2 months and I'm right back there. It's really strong in our world, in this world, and that's why we come to church services and take classes and have beautiful nights like last night to remind ourselves who we really are, to transcend the lower vibration that is constantly wanting to pull us away from who we really are, because who we are is magnificent. What does it look like when we act from who we really are? Well, for me, last night was a beautiful example of that. We had, forgive me if I'm wrong, I have 4 main people who sort of put this together. It was Jill and Debbie, Kathy and Jerry. Is that sort of correct? So they came, for those of you who don't know, they came from another community. Until they were here, we never did harvest festivals. It was completely initiated from them. It wasn't initiated to get anything. They weren't trying to prove themselves or validate. They weren't trying to take anything or give any. They were just, and they were giving, but giving from not needing anything in return. It was a pure expression of joy of who they were being. They were all completely aligned with their soul, with who they are as beings of light, and from that place gave so much. And for those of you who were here, or even who weren't here, there were tables and decorations. I mean, it was extraordinary. But it was the energy from which it was coming. In talking with them, the joy that all of them were expressing, and they were just so alive. What does that look like? What happens to a culture when that happens, when it's given with so much freedom and so much joy? By the end of the night, Jill gave her final words, and I was sitting over there, sort of just watching everything. I was enjoying witnessing, and I hadn't realized I was sitting in front of the garbage can. So, and when Jill was finished, 2 gentlemen came over, Mike and Hank, and they said, "Am I the keeper of the garbage?" And I was, "No, not really, no." But here's what was great. Mike immediately noticed that the garbage was full. He pulled it out. Hank without saying a word, he pulls it out. Hank's putting the new bag in. They're just moving. They are operating out of their own interior, spiritual, motivated leadership. They are operating out of their own completeness of being. And then as I started looking around, it's beautiful. The whole room was doing it. The tablecloths, everything that needed to get done. There was nobody organizing and say, "Okay, now we're going to have a group over here, and you're going to do this, and we're going to have a group over here." You don't need that. When people are complete within themselves, it started with Jill and Kathy and Debbie and Jerry, but then it just spread to everybody, just got up and helped. By the event was from 6:30 to 9, and by 9:25, our leaders were able to leave because the place was done. The round tables were put away. Oh, and it was Jay's birthday yesterday, too. Thanks, Jay. It was beautiful. Everyone just stepped in. And that, to me, is what spiritually motivated leadership looks like. We are all leaders of ourselves. When we know who we are, we're connected with the divine, we are complete within ourselves. We don't need to look to the right or left to know what to do. The divine within us knows exactly what to do, and it was harmonious, and it was beautiful, and I thought, this is an example of heaven on earth. It was incredible, and I walked away, as I think so many of us did from last night, just feeling so full of joy, of spirit, of the divine connection that had been so alive as this community last night. That's abundance. That's living abundantly. That's spiritually motivated leadership from an abundant place. So to be abundant as a spiritually motivated leader is to know our divine connection, is to continually, and it takes daily practice, to know that we are complete within ourselves in the divine. And lastly, it is to know that we also are growing in the divine. The divine presence in this form naturally is always evolving. It never stays. Not only does it not stay put, if it stays put, it starts to stagnate and it becomes something distorted. That its very essence in time and space is to grow and evolve. So saying that we are complete within ourselves does not mean that we stop growing. We continue to grow and evolve, but it is still in alignment with who and what we are. That growth starts to become a natural expression of our oneness and union in God. I had a friend who was married to someone who she loved, but she said she loved him, but she was clear that in the day-to-day life it wasn't going to work. So they're in this marriage, and she said, and when I say she couldn't make it work, but it wasn't going to ever make her happy. No matter how much work they did, there was just a difference in how they lived life. So she was interested in getting a divorce. She let her husband know, and he was very upset. He had been married before, and it was very painful, the divorce that he had been before. And he said, I can't go through this again. I will do anything to make this marriage work. But if this ends, I'm done. I can't put my heart through this anymore. So of course that upsets her. She doesn't want to hurt him. That's the last thing she wants to do, is to limit his good. And so there felt like there was an impasse. Her good was going to limit his good, but his good was going to limit her good. Where to go from there? So in the conversations and being with her, she finally she couldn't get past the fact that she knew that that no matter how much work they did on the marriage, this was just going to be a place of unhappiness. And so she had to follow that. So she held on to this principle that the highest good for one is the highest good for all. And that principle comes from this idea of oneness. It's impossible for my highest good to hurt your highest good, even though it cannot be seen and we cannot know. She had to trust that law of growth, that law of evolution. It was in alignment with who she was. So they went through with a divorce. And the husband also had always been very anchored in spirit and did spiritual work. 3 or 4 months after they got the divorce, he met a wonderful woman and fell in love. It was immediate how perfect they were for each other. Immediate. And they've been together now for almost 20 years. She met a guy. She's been together with him almost 20 years. Their good evolved and came out, but it couldn't be seen during that moment. So the idea of abundance comes from divine connection, being complete in oneself. That doesn't mean we don't go through very difficult times. It doesn't mean this idea of growth isn't going to challenge us and ask us to die to old ways of being, old ways of expressing, into something new. In fact, I think inevitably when we give our life to Spirit, because it is vast, because it is infinite, because it is beyond all humanity, human expression, not even human, just physical form, it's going to push itself to growth. I mean, the whole planet, the galaxies, what do we know? It grows. It evolves. In time and space, it grows and evolves. So there's an incredible courage to be abundant. Because what that connection expressed last year may not be what's expressing this year. And we need to be in alignment with hearing it and knowing when it's for when we're coming from I'm not enough? Is growth coming from not enoughness, or is growth coming from genuine expression? From a genuine expression of being, genuine expression of who I really am. And then we look at the opposite of that. We're looking at spiritually motivated leadership. As I mentioned last week, we're in our whole country is in a not just our country, the world. There's just a lot happening in the world. Again, I don't know if it's because of social media. I just see it a lot more. My news sources are now in my face all the time. So there's just an awareness of how much unrest there is. There's a lot of protests happening in countries all over the world right now. The divisiveness seems to be more intense now than it was 20 years ago. I mean, it's always been there. It's part of our culture, but it just seems very intense now. So the idea of spiritually motivated leadership. Last week we were talking about being bold. This week it's about being abundant. So to look at what it means, what it looks like not to be abundant in terms of spiritually motivated leadership. What does leadership look like when you're not connected with the divine, when you don't know you're connected with the divine? What does it look like when you don't know that you are complete in the divine within yourself, that in fact you need to get from other people because you don't have enough? What does it look like when you're not really willing to grow because you don't feel safe, because it feels like you have to control everything? Because growth requires letting go. Control, you don't grow. We don't grow. So the opposite of all of this is incredibly painful, and it's people really, I think that's where we get into so much pain on our planet Earth, is there are people who are not feeling divinely connected, who are not feeling complete within themselves, or not aware that they don't feel complete in themselves, and there's people who are not willing to grow and evolve and change and transform ideas, perceptions, because they're holding on so tight. For me, that's a reminder of how important it is to be abundant in all that we do as we show up in the world, to be bold, as we were talking about last week, and to be abundant and stand in our connection with God, to be fully who we are. The world needs each and every one of us exactly as who we are, and it needs us to grow. And even as we know this for ourselves, we need to know this for our community, for the Lighthouse community. The community is connected to the divine. This community is whole and complete in and of itself. This community is going to continue to grow and change and evolve. And not only this community, Livermore, the Bay Area, the country, the world politics, the world culture that's happening, all of it, the more it shifts from not enoughness. If we look at every war that started, every conflict, it comes from not enoughness. It comes from lack and limitation. It comes from not knowing they're connected with the divine. The more we know we're connected, the more we do that work and stand and be bold in it, be bold in who we are, collectively, organizationally, spontaneously, as we saw last night, the more we are going to be shifting our world and our country and our community into greater and greater expressions of heaven on earth. The question I always have to ask myself in times like this, I was, from a young age, always inspired by on earth as it is in heaven. And to ask, well, what does heaven feel like? What does it look like? What does it sound like? And I'll say, well, just be here last night and you'll know. But heaven on earth, that's a pretty high state of consciousness. It's pretty demanding. If we want to be heaven on earth, and it's going to demand all of us to continue to do this work. So my invitation to you, as all this month, in being spiritually motivated leaders, first of all, your leadership is needed. We need many, like last night, it was everybody was a leader. That's what heaven on earth is. Heaven on earth is everybody's playing exactly the role that we came here to play. Whatever that is, and we're willing to be that fully, even if it looks different than our neighbors, we're still willing to be fully who we are, grow in who we are, allow our neighbors to help us grow, but not change our essence. That's what's going to change this planet. That's what's going to make us heaven on earth. Any thoughts? Right on. Be bold, be abundant, and you're going to start creating heaven on earth wherever you are, in your home, in your work, on this planet. And it's happening now. You're already doing it. So thank you. I want to thank you again for last night. It was an incredible joy to behold, to witness, as well as to experience, and knowing that we have a full season of lots of miracles happening all over for all of us in this community, because we're walking in this wonderful, holy and sacred time of remembering who we really are. And so let's pray. Sometimes when we say remembering who we really are, we just hear a phrase over and over until it stops having meaning. So I'm going to invite us just to let that phrase go for a minute. Just let that go. And in this moment, if there's any part of us that is judging anything as bad or as good, let's see if we can let that go. Because if there's anything blocking us from experiencing our divine connection right now, it's our judging mind, our comparison mind of what should be or what could have been. This was better, so this is bad. We go back and forth. Let's just let all of that go in this moment. All the shoulds. Any place where we feel regret. Regret comes from a should. And let's in this moment accept that everything is just as it's supposed to be right here and right now. That this divine presence is all powerful, all loving, all clarity and truth. And it's not missing anything. It has no regrets, it has no shoulds, it has no better or worse. It simply is in all of its love and all of its glory and all of its peace and all of its joy right here and right now, fully being itself. There is nothing blocking it as our very life. And that this life is who and what we are right here and right now. Not in an abstract way, but in a very real way. Every bit of our personality, the things that we love to do, the things that we don't like to do, all of that is a beautiful fulfillment of the divine presence here on earth. Each and every one of us absolutely essential in our uniqueness for the divine heaven on earth. There's no other way we are supposed to be than how we are right now. No shoulds, no better, no worse, no right, no wrong, no good, no bad. Just for now. Just let all of those comparisons go and bask in the beauty and the glory of the living light of this moment. And this is the gift we give ourselves each and every day. We allow ourselves to say yes to the glory of this living God, this living light, this living truth, this living vibration of love, of peace, of joy, of harmony throughout our day, every day. We remember what this feels like when those moments when we feel not enough, when we feel like we should be something other than what we are, when we feel a circumstance or condition should be anything other than what it is, when we go into that sense of judgment, of separation, of otherness, we stop, we breathe, we let go of the judgments, of the shoulds, and we allow ourselves to reconnect with the divine presence that has never left, the infinite goodness, the infinite love that has never left us, that will never leave us. It is impossible. We are never, ever disconnected from the infinite love, the infinite good of our life, ever. There's no situation, no circumstance, no condition, no part of our personalities that could ever limit the infinite goodness of our God, of our love, of our joy. We are infinitely connected. We are infinitely ourselves. We are complete. We cannot add. Anything that we do this week will not add to who we are right now. Anything that happens this week can never take away from who we are right now. We walk in that power. We walk in that awareness. We shine, we live, we move, and have our being as this awareness of the abundant truth of who and what we really are beyond words. And how grateful that I am that as we know this for ourselves, we know this for those people in our lives who are calling and asking for prayer. When people are asking for prayer, they're feeling a little bit of their separation from their infinite good, from the infinite divine presence. So we hold this oneness, this divine connection for all of those people in our life who are feeling a little bit separate, who are feeling afraid, who are feeling not enough, who are feeling lack and limitation. We hold them right here and right now in the truth that nothing is missing. Nothing is lacking. That the infinite nature, the infinite power of God is right where they are. We do not need to change or fix anybody, even as we do not need to be changed or fixed. We are here to just realize the infinite, abundant truth, the divine connection, and allow it to move us and fill us every day of our life. To be fully who we are, uniquely, as our friends and families who are come to us in prayer. And now we pray for this beautiful planet of ours that's in so much pain. Both the physical environment, so many of the leaders, the people, the culture. It's intensifying that sense of separation and disconnection. So today we bring that consciousness of connection. Everyone on this planet belongs. Everyone in this planet belongs. They are accepted just as they are. They are loved and seen and known and felt just as they are. The people, the animals, the minerals, the earth itself. Everyone is part of this. Everyone is connected. Everyone belongs. We hold that consciousness as spiritually motivated leaders. When we speak our word for the highest good for all beings, not just some, all beings, all life. We are here for the good of all life, because all life is the divine presence. We are all connected, every being, every life form. And as this truth and as this, we hold this together, we move into the rest of our day, into the rest of our week, absolutely alive and motivated by the beauty and the magnificence and the joy, the unlimited joy that we experience in the always already perfection that is given to us even now. Knowing that we are always taken care of, that we are always loved, and that from this we are set free to just be these wild, unique beings that we are. And all of this good, and all of this joy, and all of this peace, we let this word be now. And I invite us to say together as one, in one. And so it is. Amen and amen.
And so it is. And so it is. And so it is. Amen. Amen. So it is. Amen.
Amen and amen.